Hello, this is Mary from Casing the Cover, and as library brats, my co-host Jen and I happen across numerous crappy covers, atrocious authors, sad titles, and the occasional masterpiece. We spend an unhealthy amount of time decoding how cover designs can be humorously contrary to the story within, and how publishers lure unsuspecting readers. Should you judge a book by the cover? Join Mary and Jen on the case to find out.
Hello, it's Jen, and welcome to another episode of Casey the Cover with my friend Mary.
Good job. I didn't cut you out that time.
I really tried to contain my loud. I was excited to do an intro.
So we just finished, we're doing back-to-back episodes today, as we do.
Yes, we do.
We just finished reviewing All the Things We Do in the Dark, which was an LGBT, creepy, scary, the LGBT part wasn't creepy and scary. It was an LGBT romance that was lost in a book about murder. And now Jen is going to talk about the LGBT romance book that she's been reading.
Yes.
Which is hopefully has less murder.
No. A whole heck of a lot more. And vampires. So, I have a LGBT book that actually is the book that started this whole thing where we were going to read LGBT books, because I didn't pick this up because of that. I picked it up because I know the author.
Right.
And so... And I will say, like, from the get-go of this book, this is not my typical reading material on any front. Like, none of this really is my type of reading.
Because of the samurais?
So it's the samurais and the vampire killers.
Oh, come on. You read books of vampire killers.
I really don't. I really don't read vampire books that much. I'm not into the lore that much. It would take a lot for me to, like, actively pick up a vampire book. I don't know. So... the book is called Eternal Samurai.
Oh boy, that's a cover.
It is a cover. So I am not going to make judgments about the cover, because I do believe that this was a indie published book. So the artist is probably just trying to get started on stuff.
Here's the thing. The art isn't necessarily bad. It's the concept. It's a naked samurai.
He's not naked. He's got pants on.
Yeah, except... barely.
It's very romance novel.
Yeah, it is. It looks like the Hot and Badgered sequel cover, except that he has swords.
Oh my gosh, it does.
It does.
Oh my gosh, it totally looks like him.
And also it's cartoon. It's like manga style, right?
It is kind of manga style, which kind of fits-ish, because again, it's called Eternal Samurai, so it's got a lot of, I would say, I used to be a big time anime fangirl.
Yeah, me too.
And manga reader. So like I get a lot of that vibe from this book, from the story.
But this is not by someone who is Japanese, correct?
No. So the author she is British. She has worked with the LGBT community.
Okay.
So she's worked with the LGBT community here in the area. For a couple of different like community centers and things like that. And I don't know. A part of me feels like this was written kind of as her way to connect with an audience that she was around all the time.
Okay.
Because I know that the community that she worked with was younger LGBT, like kind of late teens, early 20s. So like I feel like this is kind of her reaching out to that audience.
Okay.
And in an attempt to connect. I'm not sure if they knew who the author was, if they would be flattered by it.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the back cover a little bit, not the whole thing, because it's actually a really long summary.
Yeah, it is.
It's got a lot. So, samurai and vampire, mortal enemies, eternal lovers.
Okay.
All right, so Tatsu Cobb is our main character, or one of them, and he is the last of an ancient samurai house. He will not stop until he takes the head of the vampire that butchered his family. But his vow of revenge means he gives up on any and all hope for the once and forever love. Then he crosses swords with Saito Arzada, a second in command of Seattle's vampires. This takes place in future Seattle, by the way.
The hell?
Yeah, so this second in command of the vampires is the most beautiful creature Tatsu has ever seen. The sexual chemistry between them is pure, hard, and undeniable. Unable to accept Arzada might be the killer of his family, Tatsu begins a dangerous game. A game driven by all-consuming thirst for blood that will force them to the extremes of love and hate. So the other guy, Sato, who is a monk who was turned into a vampire like 800 years ago. So 800-year-old vampire and vampire killer.
This sounds like a romance novel version of anime.
Yeah.
I can totally see how you're saying it was kind of to appeal to that younger generation, which I totally get that.
Yeah.
Even down to the LGBT element, just because I was totally into anime when I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
And there's, especially in Japan, there's kind of that boy love to a degree. So I almost wonder if it's kind of playing with that as well.
Yeah, because there is definitely like the older vampire is like trying to protect Tatsu from, whenever he gets into this kind of stuff, and he protects him and saves his life. And
so he's senpai.
I
should note that neither one of us is LGBT or Japanese, so
right?
We are not experts on either of these things.
No, but the culture of it and the having read the genre and familiarity with the genre and how it works,
you can see the tropes of it.
It totally tags all those tropes. The other thing is, I think I kept sending you pictures when I was reading this, the paragraphs in it, because I started reading this right kind of at the beginning of when we went into pandemic mode.
That sounds right. Yeah,
I'm sending people pictures of these paragraphs of like, there was this disease, and all these people got it, and some of them turned into vampires, and then the vampire stuff, and it was just like, okay, when do we all turn into vampires? Because I seriously was sending people pictures of the paragraphs in here. I'm like, this book wasn't written like during this time period. This book was written in 2012.
Oh yeah, it's a while ago.
So this book is a little bit older, and I have had it on my shelves for a while. If that gives you any idea what my to-be-read pile looks like.
Well, it's interesting when you're in the middle of, like, a world-altering event to realize just how many, like, books and movies and stuff actually speak to that without thinking that they would.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, all these authors who are like, I'm sorry I wrote that. I put that in there. Maybe should have changed that. I actually did kind of enjoy this book, but it was a bit jarring. Okay, so you've got killing vampires, a battle at a monastery 800 years ago that slaughters everybody but this one guy. You've got this kid on a motorcycle murdering vampires and all this stuff going on, and then all of a sudden you're like whiplashed back into this kid's past where he meets this Native American kid too. Like, this is when he was like younger, so the guy is probably only like a year older than him or something, so it's not creepy or weird or anything like that, but this is like his first lover, his first love, and it goes into great detail. So this is definitely on the romance erotica side of things. So the cover does not lie.
How, like, you're saying she wrote this maybe to appeal to the young people she was working with. So are we talking about, like, young adults? Or are we talking about, like, teenagers?
Oh, no, we're talking young adults. Like 20-something.
Okay.
Because, like I said...
It's not YA.
No. This is a romance novel. And it gets erotic. I'm going to say I got a little warm on a couple of scenes. And I don't read romance.
No, you don't.
So I'm not mentally prepared for these.
Last time you tried to read a romance novel, you literally got 3 chapters into it.
Yeah, it doesn't, no, it doesn't work. So actually, this apparently is the kind of romance novel I need to read because, yes, there's romance scenes, but then you've got, let's kill vampires.
Right. It's fantasy romance.
And it's like, and it's not even the killing vampires part because, like, that's super over the top to me too. Like when they're jumping through the air and like blades are flying and that kind of thing. It's kind of more the mafioso-esque feel of how the vampire is controlling the city that kept me going in this. Is like, oh, who else is in this web and who else is involved in that? And
it's like the intrigue of the
it was the intrigue and the kind of the mystery of it.
Book sounds like it's got a lot of elements going on. So it's LGBT samurai vampire mafia erotica.
Yes, it's still erotica, but it has suspense and it has a lot of interesting stuff going on, and it is decently written. So I give a lot of leeway for indie books because we know that they're not paying the very best editors, and they're doing their damnedest. There were some word choices that I was like, that was weird. I had to read that more than once. There were a couple spelling errors, but overall, it pulled me through the end.
Mhm.
Like that part of it was really good. There was something else I was going to say about the love story aspect, and now I forgot. I've drawn a blank. Okay, so I don't want to spoiler it, but the love story aspect doesn't have an unhappy ending.
Doesn't have an unhappy ending.
Yes, it doesn't have an unhappy ending.
But is it a happy ending?
That's all I'm saying because I don't want to spoil it. Because I do think some people are reading it for the love story aspect of it.
I mean, I think if you go into a book that's got a samurai vampire ninja on the cover, you're not going into it for the romance.
Okay.
Maybe, because he's half naked. So.
But this is what I was going to say. Now I remember. This is a romance novel where the demographic, if nothing else, is probably male.
I think the majority of LGBT fiction, it's not written for women necessarily, but I think the majority of readers of romance in general are women, and I think that's still the case for LGBT fiction.
Except for this one.
Because of the fighting, or what?
Because of the explosions and the fighting and the way that it's written. It's written like a James Bond novel. It's written like a Born Supremacy.
Women like that stuff too, you know.
Yeah, but they're not as drawn to it. If they're going to read a romance novel, they're going to want something like Red, White, and Royal Blue.
Okay, pull up your cover again. Let me look at your cover again, because the focus of this cover isn't the explosions, it's the naked man.
Still!
That cover is made to draw in women. The majority of people who read romance fiction in general, and I don't know where you get a statistic on this, but I'd be interested to see the statistic. I think the majority of romance in general, including LGBT romance, is read by women.
I still think this book was for guys.
The cover isn't.
I don't know. I'm not a gay dude, but I'd be turned on by that if I were.
Yes, but my point is that it's still, the cover is still drawing into the romance, sexy, erotica element of it, not the explosion James Bonding.
No, but there is a lot of James Bond-esque kind of stuff going on in this book. This book is kind of nonstop, honestly. And you do get whiplash, though. Like, that's the one thing that I was like, oh my gosh, because I'd be reading like a romance scene in it, and all of a sudden I'm whiplashed over to, and now we're killing vampires. I'm like, what? Wait, my brain.
Which also isn't uncommon for romance novels in general.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And let me ask you a question. Now, you haven't read much romance novels, as you've admitted to, but do you think that it follows some of those, it might follow some of those like romance novel tropes of...
Oh, yes.
Like, because half the romance novels are vampire romance novels.
I would say this 100% follows the tropes of a romance novel. Because, I mean, let's talk the very basic of usually the two characters hate each other in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then fall in love at the end. And there's some big fight that happens between them. Well, this is just very literal about the fight that's happening between them.
So it's Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
I haven't read that, but yes. But there's actual sword fights between these characters that happen. I did enjoy the book. I don't want to spoil it, but I suppose knowing that it's very tropey with the romance stuff, and it's very into and I already mentioned all the explosions and things like that, but I also will say don't get too attached with certain characters, because wow, it kind of shocked me. Like, she was not afraid to kill off some characters.
Well, that's an action movie book.
It is.
Not movie
book. But yes, it's written like an action movie. In fact, I think that's part of the reason why it was such an easy read through, was because it reads like a movie. It's moving constantly. There's no real lull, no time to breathe. And especially between okay, now we've got a love scene, and now we've got an action scene, and now let's do a couple more love scenes, and let's do an action scene. And ping pong. But I did not go into this book thinking I would like it at all. I'll be completely honest. I read this book because I'm like, okay, I know the author, I should give it a go.
What made you think you wouldn't like it?
Okay, reading the back cover, mostly, it's kind of extra.
Yeah, too much going on.
There's a lot going on. And also, like, I'm not the demographic for this book.
Right.
And even if I was at one point with the, anime and all that kind of stuff, I don't think that at the time that this book was written, I don't think I was still part of the demographic. So even if I read this book the very first time I got it, which I don't think I got it in 2012. I think I probably got it later than that. But even if I read it then, I don't think I was enough of the demographic. But I do know some people who I would totally recommend this book to because they're still super into anime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really if that's even if that's the only thing that you're into with the anime and the manga and all that kind of stuff, I think you'd dig this book.
Yeah.
I do think it's an adult book though. Like, it is not a book for,
no.
I'm not going to give this book to a 16-year-old.
No.
I would give this book to a 20-year-old. I might even give it to an 18-year-old.
It seems like a book written for a very specific audience.
Yes. It definitely has a very narrow demographic. I think even the book that you read, that was LGBT, I think you could read it not even for the romance of it, because yours didn't have any erotica in it.
Because it's YA.
Yeah.
Like, there's a makeout scene. You don't have erotica in YA. You don't have erotica in most books except erotica. Like,
yeah.
Sex scenes are not usually very explicit in books that are not specifically romance novels. And
That's
even
true.
a lot of romance novels, it's not super explicit. Some is very explicit. Some isn't.
This is explicit.
Yeah.
Explicit.
I actually think it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because I have not read a lot of adult novels as an adult. I still read a lot of YA, and the adult novels I read are usually sci-fi fantasy. I don't read a lot of contemporary adult fiction, so I don't know, like, comparatively, if you just go to the shelf and pick up, whatever the newest whatever book is, if, like, what the ratio is to, like, explicit sex scenes in, like, a romance novel versus, like, your general fiction kind of a thing. Like, even that Gillian Flynn book we read, which we still have not released the episode of yet, that'll probably go out in October. Even that book, like, she's giving hand jobs and it's not explicit. She just goes, yeah, I give out hand jobs, right?
Yes.
So, like, sex is a subject in a lot of adult contemporary fiction, but I kind of feel like it's the same way it is in movies, where there's the suggestion of it, but unless you're reading romance or erotica, it's not always there.
Yes. I would say, though, like, if this was going to be released for television, let's say, because that's kind of where we get our rating system for things, I would say that this is definitely HBO level release on things.
Yeah.
It's like, there is definitely, like, some Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, though.
But even Game of Thrones is not that explicit. There's lots of naked people in it, but you don't see a lot of, like, straight up sex scenes. Like, you see some.
Well, but in the books.
I haven't read all the books.
Oh, you haven't read any of them, have you?
I read the first one.
Oh, okay. I feel like there's more explicit sex in the books.
Yeah.
Like, it's written. I don't know. But this is definitely a very explicit book. This is not for under 18 at all. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't, like, a good story. And again, like, the world that they're in, the world building was really good too. I will give it that. It was still kind of like sci-fi movie of the week kind of thing, but she did a good job of putting it in a perspective of, like, yeah, I can see the city that they're in. I can see the world that they live in. And the kind of biker gang aspect of some of it too.
Biker gang.
Yeah, there's kind of a biker gang-esque feel to it, because there's, like, a mercenary group that kills the vampires. There's a lot going on in this book. There's a lot of elements. There's a lot of things going on in this book. I think if it were me, I would never have picked this book up off the shelf.
I don't think I would either.
I think I would have looked at it once and gone, okay, that's clearly a romance novel, not for me.
Unless I was doing a podcast episode on it.
And then I think I would have turned the book over and read the back and gone, oh my God, what is this? Because it's really trying to be everything at once on the back cover.
Mm-hmm.
And and they do speak Japanese a little bit in this book. So there is like some Japanese phrases and things. It's all in context though, so like you can get what's going on. You don't have to read Japanese to know what's going on. But it's a very sexy anime manga vampire erotica book that I definitely think yes.
There's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack in this book, but I don't know. I think if she came out with a sequel to it, I do think I would read it.
I guess I would say that is the advantage of doing what we're doing to a degree. Because if we were not reading books because they had weird covers, there's a lot of stuff that we would not read that we are reading.
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. Because there's at least 2 more that I have to talk about that I would never have picked up if it weren't for what we do. Yeah.
I need to read something new and weird. I haven't read a weird one in a while.
I think I kind of stole the last weird one that you could have read, but
yeah, but I kind of want to see how you interpret that one.
Wait, which one?
Apocalypse Arc.
Oh my gosh, Apocalypse Arc. Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know what we're at for episode time, but if that is what we end on, I just want to say I'm super excited to talk about Apocalypse Arc. I am beyond excited to talk about Apocalypse Arc. Bursting at the seams to talk about that book.
Well, in a forthcoming episode, maybe, I don't know when. Eventually it'll come out.
That book was such a freaking trip. I have recommended that book to so many people since I finished reading it. Because if I have to go through that, so do you.
That's mean. That's cruel.
It's like giving someone fruitcake.
That should be like the next time you do like a white elephant gift exchange. It's just a copy of Apocalypse Arc.
Oh my gosh. Because that was another crazy action book. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I will relate back to Eternal Samurai with it in the sense of it was another action-packed, oh my God, I cannot breathe kind of book. Only for every redeeming quality that Eternal Samurai has, that one doesn't.
If you're confused about what Apocalypse Arc is, we haven't done an episode reviewing it, but we did bring it up in our sci-fi versus fantasy episode, so go find that and listen to that.
Yes.
It's one of the books that we pulled when we were analyzing, and we read the summary, and it's a friggin' trip.
It's such a trip, and the whole book is a friggin' trip. Oh my God. Okay, clearly we've gone off the rails.
Yeah, we were losing our minds a little bit.
And
do we have things to recommend? I don't know that we do.
I'm recommending Apocalypse Arc.
I am going to say, here's my recommendation for this week. It's a TV show, not a book, because it usually is. Have I recommended The Magicians yet?
I don't know.
There you are.
I feel like you recommended The Magicians.
Have I just recommended The Magicians to you, or have I recommended it on the podcast?
I don't know. Now you've recommended it on the podcast, possibly twice.
So The Magicians is, there's a book series and a television show. I have yet to read the books because apparently they're not that great. The show is excellent, especially the first, 4 seasons. The last season was kind of But it's a really good fantasy show. It's like adult Harry Potter. It is very adult. There's drug use and sex and violence. It's great. And it has one of probably the best LGBT characters on television. And so I would recommend that show. And it has actually really good story arcs for people who are LGBT. And there needs to be more of that and more of them actually having good stories and things. I've been watching a lot. Oh, there's a YouTube channel too. I can't remember the name of it. But I will say, go check out, there's a video on YouTube called, I think, the Queens of Disney, something like that. It's basically about queer coding in Disney. And his entire YouTube channel is about queer coding in the media and things like that. He's got one on the history of Hollywood. I've been doing some research. So it's a very good channel. Let me see. It should be in my recommended feed. Let me look it up real quick.
That's cool. Well, and with this book too, I do hope to at some point interview the author, because I do know her vaguely. It's like a Kevin Bacon know her.
Friend of a friend of a friend.
Friend of a friend of a friend. Twice removed, something like that. I don't know how that works. But yeah, so I do hope to interview her at some point, at which point she can reveal which community organization she has worked with and things like that. But I will say, as far as like community organizations here in our area, 1 in 10 is a really great organization for younger LGBT individuals, and I have worked with them, and they are really cool. I think they're a great organization. So if you're looking for organizations to kind of reach out to and talk to.
So the YouTube channel I'm recommending, it's called, his name is James Somerton. The video he just recently put out is called Evil Queens, A Queer Look at Disney History. Now, this video is excellent, and he got a lot of views very quickly. Unfortunately, YouTube is run by assholes, and they demonetized him because he quoted an actual Disney employee using a derogatory term for gay people. It was a quote to point out the fact that there was homophobia within the Disney organization, and Disney decided to demonetize his hour-long video. Not Disney, YouTube. After Disney tried to copyright strike his other videos. So he's a really great channel. He does a lot of LGBT content. He did the Evil Queens video. He also did a video about LGBT representation in horror, which I'm not a horror person, but it's a really good video. He does a 3-part series on the history of LGBT representation in cinema, including like before, during, and after the Hays Code era, which if you know nothing about the Hays Code, that's a trip. Spend some time learning about the Hays Code because it's very, very interesting. And his most recent video is about the gay adult film industry. So he's got some really, really interesting content. He makes some really good videos, and it's a fairly small channel. He only's got, I mean, we have 24 subscribers, so we're not going to give him many views, but he's only got about 20,000 subscribers, and he deserves way more than that. He's got really well-researched video essays, and he's the kind of person you should be going to if you need more information about LGBT representation in the media. So
yeah, we are not the people to be going to, but no, we really are trying to be a sympathetic ear and open hearts and open minds.
Trying to educate myself too, but again, look to people who are more informed than we are, and
yes,
probably are better experts on it, which is why we're recommending what we're recommending.
Yeah,
resources and creators.
Cool.
I think it's about it for this week.
All right.
I painted a whole hand while we were talking. Oh my gosh,
she's painted her nails rainbow while we're talking about this, and I know that wasn't her intention. She was just playing with her new nail polish.
I recommend Holo Taco by Simply Nailogical because I just got my order in, and oh my god, it's fantastic. And I'm not obsessed with nail polish at all. All right, we need to go. Until next time.
Until next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for cracking another case with Mary and Jen. To learn more about Casing the Cover, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Casing the Cover. To contact us or suggest a book, email casingthecoverpod@gmail.com. New episodes of Casing the Cover release the second and fourth Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.